All right, good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Steve Chanley. I'm with Queen Anne's County Parks and Recreation. And again, welcome to the BPAG Advisory Group meeting. I guess we can go ahead. It seems like we've got most everybody online. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. There's a motion.
You actually don't have to do that for BPAG, luckily. So we can
No?
skip that one.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm
Just go
sorry.
straight to roll call. No worries.
Okay. All right. So we'll go to the roll call. Charlene, I guess that's you.
Great. City of Annapolis,
Hello, everyone. This is William Rao. I'm actually representing also Eric Lashinsky, who couldn't attend today's meeting, but wishes he was here.
Anne Arundel County,
Hi, Dan Allen, Anne Arundel County Office of Transportation.
Baltimore City,
Hello, this is John Leisman and Tyler Smith here from Baltimore City.
Baltimore County, Carroll County,
Hi, everybody. Ethan Strickler here from Carroll County's Comprehensive Planning Division.
Harford County,
Hi everyone, this is Cyril from Harford County Planning and Zoning.
Howard County,
Hello, this is Chris Etoff from Howard County Office of Transportation.
Queen Anne's County,
I'm here, Steve Chandley.
NDE,
Catherine here for MDE.
Maryland Department of Planning,
Hi, Brooks Phelps here from Maryland Department of Planning.
MHSO.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, having problems with the mic. Cynthia's breaks here.
Thank you. MTA.
Brittany Sink, Office of Baltimore Regional Planning.
Thank you. MDOT SHA.
Hey, Shane Sarver here for SHA.
MDOT TSO.
Afternoon, everyone. Meg Young from MDOT TSO.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
All right. I guess now we can move on to the approval of the minutes. Need a motion, please?
I motion.
And a second.
This is Meg. I'll second.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to our first presentation. It will be done by Elk Ridge BPPA and Scooter. They'll be talking about the Baltimore City Bicycle Pedestrian and Scooter Counter Program. We'll have John Leishman from Baltimore City Department of Transportation and Mr. Daniel, is it Legary or Legree from
Legier, actually.
Eco Counter?
Daniel Legier, but
Legier,
close.
okay.
No, it's okay.
But I'll go ahead and turn it over to you guys now.
Perfect. And if you don't mind, I'm actually going to take over the screen share just for the presentation, if that's okay with you.
Totally works. Let me do stop sharing and I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so when Charlene asked me to present about the Baltimore City Bike Counter Program, we have a very elaborate program here around here, and I thought that so we work hand in hand with Eco Counter. I meet with Daniel here once per week, and so Daniel and I are going to share about our program and give you guys a lot of insight. So you can take it away.
Great. Thanks, John. Yeah, as John mentioned, I work very close. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me first. Everyone's able to hear me coming through. Just get a few thumbs up. Great. Okay, thank you. So yeah, my name's Daniel. I work at an organization called Eco Counter. I work closely with John on Baltimore DOT's active transportation count program, so collecting specifically bike ped and scooter data as well. And really today I wanted to take maybe about 20 to 25 minutes to kind of go through and explain their account program and how we've been working with them over the few years and some of the work that's being done. So first of all, I just want to give you a quick overview of the agenda. So we're covering four main things, which would be, first of all, an intro into what EcoCounter is. Some of you might be familiar with us, some of you may not, but really what we do, who we are, and also why you would want to why we'd want to collect count data in the first place, and then get into more specifically Baltimore DOT's count program, kind of the history, and also an overview of the program. Do a little overview of the hardware or the actual counters that they use, so some of the specific counters they use to collect this data. And then also a review of the actual data itself. So just kind of look at the different ways that it can be visually represented and how the data is used and shared. And then we'll leave some room for questions at the end. If we run out of time, definitely feel free to shoot me an email. My email should be, or I can share it with you afterwards, but definitely we can leave some time at the end for questions. So yeah, first of all, I just wanted to go into what exactly is EcoCounter, so what we do. Just generally, I mean, we work obviously with DOTs in many different cities and MPOs and different organizations, counties as well, throughout the US and Canada. We provide a few different things. So we provide the actual hardware to collect count data. So collecting, again, bike and pedestrian and vehicle data and scooter data if needed. The actual software to analyze and interpret the data and share that data, of course. And also the technical expertise to actually maintain the equipment. We work really closely with John and the Baltimore team to make sure that the counters and the hardware is operating correctly, and also data services, so how to actually analyze and interpret the data and also do storytelling with the data to accomplish what you set out for. So just a very quick overview. We're about 20 years in the business. We work with many different organizations. As you can see here, we actually have proudly the Baltimore City DOT logo here as one of our big clients. But we work with a lot of other state DOTs, MPOs, counties, etc. And as of yesterday, we actually work in 50 states, not 49. We sold our first counter in Mississippi. We're all very excited about that. So yeah, we work a lot throughout the US and Canada, and also Europe, and even some other countries as well. But those are mainly our big markets. And yeah. So first of all, why count? So, there's many different reasons why our clients might collect some count data, specifically with Baltimore, why they kind of reached out to us and why we started collaborating with John and Baltimore DOT was to sort of justify new investments would be one main thing. So to develop new bike lanes or protected facilities and really inform budgets, right? So just get some good quantitative kind of ground truth count data to better understand the networks, and then also gauge demand for network growth. And most importantly, how to actually communicate the success, both internally and also with the public. So how to actually tell the stories with that data. And we'll actually get into this a little bit more later on in the presentation. And yeah, so I just want to kind of explain how we began working with Baltimore, and also, all of our clients, we kind of followed a very similar step-by-step process to build a count program. So first of all, we started with a preliminary study and installation. So I think dating back to, John, I think it was 2022 maybe when the conversation started to pick up about developing a count program.
Yes.
Yeah. So back in 2022, we started in discussions with Baltimore to decide what their goals were, why they wanted to count, where they wanted to count, what kind of data they were looking for, choosing specific sites and locations, picking what specific counters would work for them, and then also defining a budget and kind of a yearly cost that would be that would work for them, and then sell those counters and then start installing them with John's team and also with some of the contractors they work with locally to get these counters up and running. And I'll get into the kind of hardware the counters a little bit later and how they work. Then after that, we get to step 2, which is actually just starting to collect count data, right? So the counter's installed, we're collecting count data. As you can see now, John's been counting probably for about 3 years roughly with the counters, maybe a little bit more. And then that data is counted, stored locally on the counters. And in step 3, that data is uploaded to the actual software. So there's a software component where you actually analyze and interpret the data, begin to share stories and interpret the data, and we would work with you along that way. And Baltimore specifically does this in a number of different ways. They have an internal software that they can share and tell stories internally with their team, but they also have a public web page that maybe some of you have seen, where the data is actually visible to anybody, basically that can finds the webpage, their public webpage. And we work closely with them to kind of tell different stories in step 4 here to analyze and interpret the data. And then afterwards, we would kind of just work with John and their team to maintain their program, make sure that the counters are working well, that they're able to tell the story they want with the data, need help analyzing and interpreting them, helping with things like battery changes and these sorts of things for the actual hardware. And we work really hard with John to maintain these counters over the last few years. And yeah, so just a brief overview about how all of our counters work. I won't spend too much time on this because I want to get into the specific counters later. But basically, we have the actual hardware that collects the data and then the software to analyze and interpret it. But if you can see here in this diagram, all of our counters have a sensor, be it like an infrared or magnetic sensor, depending on the type of counter, and that counts and collects the data and stores it locally. And then that data is stored locally on a logger, basically, or like a hard drive on the counter, and then that data is daily uploaded through a software where John can interpret it, or anyone else that's interested, either internally or externally, if they want access to the data. You can reach out to them to collaborate that if that's something you're interested in the future. And yeah, just in regards to some of the different types of sites that they have in Baltimore, it's mostly permanent sites, so counters that are actually installed permanently. We'll get into the specifics later, but we have counters that just count pedestrians, that can count and classify pedestrians. We have counters which are like an infrared sensor in these posts, or loops that are installed in the surface like this for counting bikes and scooters. And then also counters that can do both. They can count pedestrians, cyclists, and scooters, or all three, I guess, sorry. And we'll get into the specifics here in a second, but here are just a few examples of where these counters could be installed. Great. All right. Oh, and yeah, so first of all, I wanted to get into, or next, sorry, I wanted to get into just kind of an overview of Baltimore's count program because it's quite impressive. They've developed a pretty big count program within a few years. So first of all, the conversation of developing a count program dates back to 2022, and the counters were purchased and installed in early 2023. But actually, Baltimore has been interested in bike and ped data, I think even dating back to 2010, maybe for some smaller projects in my research. But the real count program really started about 3 years ago. And currently there are 14 counters installed in the area. And there's actually a nice map from the public webpage you can see just of all the different count sites. And we have 9 that are just bike counters, 4 that are multi-counters that can count and collect data on both bikes and pedestrians, and then also 1 pedestrian counter that's more of like a mobile counter that can be moved from site to site. And in terms of future plans, ideally, working closely with John to hopefully do this in the future, but really to install at least 1 permanent counter at every new protected facility within the city and surrounding area, and also begin to do portable or temporary counts to do before and after studies. So actually getting some data before the infrastructure is built, and then also getting some more permanent data after the infrastructure is built to kind of track that impact that the new infrastructure had. And then just to see some key figures that might be interesting, that's pulled from the public webpage as well. This is last year. The total of counts is close to 1 million from all the different counters. The daily average is over 215 counts per site. And as you can see, there's a few key sites here that are getting quite a bit of volume per site as well. So, and all of these count sites we won't get into too in depth today, but you can dig into these more specifically. But I'm just kind of giving you an overview of some of the more active sites and maybe recognize some of these locations from here. All right, so now I want to get into just the specifics of the 3 types of counters that they have. As I mentioned, there's 3 types of counters. They have Zelt bike counters, Pyrobox Evo pedestrian counters, and multi-counters. So I really want to kind of explain what these are since they are installed in Baltimore currently. So first of all, we have the Zelt counter, which is just a bike counter. It can also count e-scooters as well, actually, but typically they're just used for counting bikes. And the way that they work is that there are loops that are saw cut into the surface like this by usually a contractor or anyone that has a saw to do so. And they're sealed, and then basically they detect bikes as they bike over. So the way that they work is there's magnetic loops, as I mentioned, that are installed in the surface. And as the bike goes over these loops, It's picking up a metal detection or like an electromagnetic field from the actual metal from the bike. Typically the tires, not usually because they're closer to the actual loops, not the bike itself. And it can determine that it's a bike, and often depending on the type of counter or model of counter, but sometimes even the speed of that counter as well, or the bike, sorry. And they're also able to ignore cars. You know, that there's other metal objects obviously going over these counters, but they're actually able to only detect cyclists and just ignore all other modes of transportation. So you can see here, this is a bit of a diagram, a kind of an aerial view of a bike passing over the loops, and it would give off a profile like this because both tires are passing over this loop, and that would determine that it's a bike and also determine the speed as well. So that's kind of just generally how the counter works. And yeah, so that would be the bike counters. Again, just counting and classifying cyclist data. And then secondly, we have a Pyrobox Evo. I won't spend too much time on this because it isn't really the main focus of their count program. But a Pyrobox Evo is basically an infrared or heat-based sensor which collects pedestrian data. So it will actually count all non-motorized transportation, but it will classify it as a person. It can't tell the difference between a bike or a person or a scooter because it's using a heat-based sensor that's basically detecting body heat from people as they pass by. So if all non-motorized transportation is counted as a person. Yeah. And yeah, just to kind of give you an overview of it here, they're quite compact and small compared to some of our other counters, which makes them really great. They're quite mobile if you need to move them from site to site. Sometimes they're installed permanently at a site. Other times they're moved every few weeks or a few months at different locations to do short-term counts. And they can be installed in many different types of areas. And yeah, so they're quite a bit more flexible. They're also very lightweight and compact and kind of discreet. So they're quite easy to manage, but meant more for short-term counting, but can still be used in the same site for long periods of time if needed. Again, just as a reminder, it's just pedestrian counts, cannot differentiate. But a huge focus of Baltimore's count program is really to know the difference between bikes and pedestrians. So that's why they've invested in a handful of multi-counters as well, multi-EVOs. So multi-EVOs essentially is basically a combination of what we just looked at, the Zelt bike counters and the Pyro Evo sensor. It's a combination of both technologies. So, and that's how they work here. So if I go over to this diagram, you can see here that you'll see that there's these bike loops, which are in socket in the surface, those Zelt bike loops that I mentioned, but also a pedestrian counter that's very similar to the one that's in the box that I just showed you for the Pyro box, but instead it's installed in a metal bollard or post. And in this diagram's case, they actually have it counting on the sidewalk and then counting cyclists on the protected bike lane or shared use path. You could alternatively have that turned around on the bike lane as well, if that's like a path where you want to count, you know, bikes, pedestrians, and scooters on the same path. So it's quite flexible in that case. And yeah, so and they work very similar to the other two counters that I showed you. It's really just both of those combined into one. And yeah, very similar to the other counters. They're quite discrete. As I mentioned, like the loops, they're socket into the surface. And instead of having it in a box, the pyro sensor, you'd actually have it installed in a metal bollard like this or a wooden post like this, which I think Baltimore has both options. Yeah, and here's just a quick diagram. I won't spend too much time on this, but I wanted to just show you what it looks like and how to kind of maintain this. So basically the battery and the sensor and everything fits within the actual post itself. This is the wooden post. Again, we have a metal post option too. And then the loops would just basically kind of protrude from the counter, and everything exists in the post. And yeah, so anytime that John needs to do a battery swap, he's coming in here, removing the cap and installing the batteries, things like here. Quite easy to maintain, usually about every year or 2 years, depending on the type of counter, you'd have to replace the battery. And yeah, so quite discreet. Yeah, so that's again an overview of the hardware. Again, there's 3 different types of counters. There's just the bike counters on their own, the pedestrian counters on their own, and then a multi-counter which can count and classify and differentiate between the two. And then moving on to the software side of things, we have a platform called EcoVisio, which is basically the internal kind of data visualization software. So this is what John would use where he would log in to a website. It's just a browser website that you would log into to see all their different count sites, to manage all the count sites, share data, create graphs and charts and reports, and all sorts of things, and really kind of internally visualize and interpret that data, and then maybe create reports to share. And yeah, so this is where when you're running an account program, once the counters are actually installed and set up and operating, most of your work will be done in EcoVisio with a little bit of field work here and there, but for the most part, you should be spending more time on EcoVisio and analyzing and interpreting the data. And then secondly, there's the public-facing version of EcoVisio. This everyone has access to, so any of you right now could go on to this website right here in the bottom of the page. I'm sure it's actually, I think, maybe linked through their actual DOT website.
It's in the chat right now too.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thanks, John. So definitely feel free to check this out. You can interact with it and click on different sites to see more information about each site. And yeah, and it's not as robust as the internal information, but I'm sure you could get a lot of interesting data just from looking at this. And again, it's not just available to you all, but just the public in general. Anyone can access this link. Yeah, another thing I wanted to just kind of briefly touch on as well is another service that we provide for John in the city of Baltimore is data validation reconstruction. So this is a huge thing that's very important. So with counting, sometimes there are issues that cause anomalies in the data. So really low data, really high data that's anomalous, or data that is inaccurate, or maybe even just missing, right? These sort of things can happen from time to time. Luckily, it's rare, but sometimes, such as things like, let's say there was construction where a counter needed to be taken down for a month or a few weeks, or let's say a battery died, or let's say that a counter was overcounting because it was positioned incorrectly on a path they weren't supposed to be counting on. These are all things that may, really affect the accuracy of the data. Luckily, we have a data services team in-house that actually works with John every 3 months. Actually, there's quarterly data validation reconstruction that the city does, in which our team goes through all the data for all their counters every 3 months, so quarterly, and they will point out any anomalies they notice. So again, really high data, missing data, or very low data, and they'll begin to ask questions and say, "Hey, I noticed these strange inaccuracies. Are these normal? Would you like us to reconstruct this data, or would you like to leave the data as is?" So for example, maybe there was extreme overcounting. I know John mentioned that on certain Fridays, there's bike events where the bike counts are extremely high. And those sort of things you would want to include because those are obviously real counts, but our team may flag those first and say, "Hey, I noticed that it's extremely high on these certain days." And then John would go through about every 3 months and review those anomalies that our team pointed out and decide whether or not to fix that data, in other words, reconstruct it, or to ignore it and just leave the data as is. And to reconstruct, without getting too in-depth into it, but the process actually includes, or basically the way that it works, is our team will look at historical data from that count site. Let's say, for example, there was missing count data for 2 or 3 weeks. They would look at the historical data from that count site. Luckily, you have a few years of data in Baltimore already. But they would also look at count data from other counters nearby in the same network that correlate historically well with that count site. So if they follow similar trends, they can use an algorithm basically to reconstruct their data to get a best, accurate guess of what that data would be and reconstruct it and kind of fill in those gaps or flatten those curves. And then in EcoVisio, you could see both the reconstructed data, but also the original data too, if you need it. And just to kind of briefly show you here, I won't spend too much time on this, but I'll just kind of quickly show you. So we have one counter, 600 Jones Falls Trail, where there was a decrease dramatically here. So our team reached out and said, "Hey, I noticed that on this specific day, there was a very, very massive decrease in the bike data. Is there a reason for this? Would you like us to fix the data, reconstruct it, or leave it?" And then John would have the decision to do that. And again, they would use or leave the data as is. And again, they would use historic data and data from other counters that correlate well. And then he could decide if he wants to reconstruct or keep the original data. And another example, which is a bit more of an obvious one that we could definitely fix quite easily, would be when the data here completely drops off for like a few weeks here, for this counter 400 key highway. So they picked this up immediately and they said that we can construct this period of time. Um, but I think in this specific case, I believe it was just a dead battery that was replaced. So it's quite, I think in this case, we can just go ahead and reconstruct this data. So John would say, yes, there was a small period of time where the battery was dead and the counter wasn't collecting data. We can go ahead and click on reconstruct, and this would signal our team to go into a reconstruction process and fix that data basically, which is great because, without having this feature, you would have your averages and over longer periods of time would really be affected. So it's really important to have accurate data, and not just accurate data, but also not missing chunks of data like this. So it's important to kind of fill in those gaps. Yep. And then in terms of the reporting, I just took some kind of key. There's many different graphs and charts and kind of what we call as widgets from our software, but I wanted just to kind of point out a few that could be interesting. So I have one counter here at 1898 Maryland Ave in Baltimore. And we're showing just a kind of a few snapshots from the reports so we can see things. For example, right now we're just looking at the last year, so the rolling year, so May of last year until now. We can see the total counts, the busiest day, which is at the end of August, the daily average just at the specific site. We can see daily profiles, so basically the average per day or by day of the week, which is quite interesting. So you can see that, interestingly, Wednesday is actually quite busy during the week compared to actually the busiest day for the specific site. We can also see the direction, the distribution. So if people are going north or southbound, I believe, on Maryland Avenue in this case, and then also the monthly traffic. So basically the total counts per month. And this is just, 4 or 5 different examples of things that we could see. There's, hundreds of other types of data sets you could include in this. And then looking at another counter, which I found kind of interesting, Jones Falls Trail. And actually, I had a chance to visit the site with John. I was actually happened to be in Baltimore nearby. I was in a conference nearby, so I had a chance to go and do some field work with John back in February, maybe February, March. I can't remember exactly when. But yeah, so I had a chance to check the site out. So very similar. I can see the distribution north and south. I can also see the hourly profiles by day. So basically, I can see which hours of the day are busiest on which day of the week, which is quite interesting. And what I found most impressive is when you do year-to-year comparisons, and this is probably where the data is the most powerful, when you're comparing previous years to the current year. So for example, we're just looking at a period of time in 2026. I think it's just, from January until now in 2026 compared to the same period of time last year. You can see that the weekday average is up 43%. And the weekend average is up almost 60%. So we can see that they're getting a lot of traffic at these specific sites, and it's becoming increasingly more popular and higher volumes. And I'm sure you could dig in a little bit deeper and even tell some more interesting stories at some of these sites. I just wanted to share that with you. And yeah, that's like I said, I just wanted to kind of do a quick 20-25 minute presentation and maybe leave some room for any questions. And if we don't have any time to answer or ask your question, feel free to email me at my email here or give me a call anytime. And yeah, I was glad to kind of share some insights into Baltimore's account program, and looking forward to maybe working with some of you in the future as well. So
Awesome. Yes. Thank you again. Any questions from the group?
All right.
Hey, John. Hey, Daniel, thanks for the presentation. This is Meg at MDOT. I want to definitely applaud all the work you've done to get this program up and running in Baltimore. It's great to see, and I know it can inform all of your future bike planning. So I really just want to plug that you can pay for bike counters through the MDOT Bikeways Grant Program. So we can pay for up to 80% of bike counters that support, building more bike facilities because they're used for planning, and the applications are still open through May 31st. So if there's
Yeah,
other jurisdictions inspired, that application in.
and to add to that, that's how Baltimore City paid for all of our 2014. So.
Great. Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that, Meg, and thanks for joining the presentation. And yeah, it sounds like a great way to start a account program or continue building a network as well.
John, any plans for future locations in Baltimore City, and if so, where?
Yeah, so we want to have one bike counter on every single piece of protected infrastructure in the city. That's our goal. So once we kind of sort through some of these prioritized applications to the MDOT grant program, we'll eventually apply for more funds for our program as well.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? All right. If not, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. We'll go ahead and move on to our next presentation by Chris Setog of Howard County Office of Transportation.
And I'll stop sharing, Chris, so you can share.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you okay.
All right. Work on sharing here. Not what I expected. Not seeing PowerPoint come up. I might just need to share screen. And then bring up my screen. Is that sharing correctly?
Not seeing anything.
Okay. Try something else.
There you go. We see it now.
We can see the presenter side. Or there you go. Yeah, so we're seeing the presenter side now.
So you see like the slides on the side as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And now you're probably seeing like my whole screen.
Yes.
Yes.
That's probably going to work there, right? I know it's not the full normal view, but I think this might be the best I can do. Do you see the whole slide?
I think so.
Okay. I think I'll have to present this way just because it seems to be the best option. Okay, so we've had two recent planning studies in the Elkridge area of Howard County, which is kind of our northeastern corner of Howard County. And Charlene asked for an update on these two projects, probably because they're related and could be of interest to the group. So the first kind of bigger picture planning effort that we did mostly during 2025 was through MDOT's Bicycle and Pedestrian Priority Area program. So I used the term BIPA for short on this one, BPPA. Some of you may have heard of this, but this is an MDOT program actually managed by Shane Sarver, who's on this call and on this group. It allows jurisdiction or area, small area in a jurisdiction in Maryland to be evaluated for bicycle and pedestrian issues and potential improvements. So in Howard County, we applied for Elkridge, and we worked through the process last year with MDOT, and the consultants were also brought on board. That's really the nice thing about this program is MDOT brings in consultant support. So we had Fair and Peers and RK&K as our consultant support. And this was basically the process we went through. We evaluated existing conditions, we had a public engagement process with a public meeting and a public survey. We did crash evaluation, pedestrian level of comfort evaluation, bicycle level of stress evaluation, and basically the end goal of the project is to come up with comprehensive recommendations. We do have a report that was a result of this process that's posted there at the Elkridge BPA website, and then the general MDOT BPA website with more general information on the program, the state level, and the application also is linked there. So in terms of what is a BPA area, again, the state program, the link is down there. It's the same link at the bottom of the page there, at the bottom of the bullets. And they are accepting applications this year through October 1. So this is a localized area, a half-mile radius, where bicyclists and pedestrians have been identified as a priority, but there are some existing issues that need to be resolved to improve bicycle and pedestrian accommodation and safety. So it helps coordinate state, local, and private stakeholders. It aligns state and local planning goals, provides for the potential of innovative bicycle and pedestrian treatments. And there are currently 16 BPA areas in the state. So the 0.5 mile radius is pretty important here. This is a map of the Elkridge area with the 0.5 mile radius that we selected. It basically shines a spotlight. It very much looks like a spotlight that's shone upon this area. And we selected this particular area. It doesn't cover all of Elkridge because 0.5 mile radius is really quite small. But we really wanted to encapsulate some key features here from Elkridge. Namely, the two schools that are up here in the north. I'll point at them. I'm not sure if I think you can probably see my pointer. So two schools up in the north, the elementary school and a middle school. And then down here in the south part of the, down near 6 o'clock on the circle is the future site of the Elkridge Community Center. So this is going to be built and within the next year or two. They're starting, they're kind of finalizing design now, and the plans are in process to build a brand new county community center down in this location. So we really want to make sure we're improving the bicycle and pedestrian access to that site as well, because the community center is a likely destination for people to get to potentially without their car. So we kind of carefully selected the area based on capturing those two locations. We also have a fire hall, a fire station up here in the kind of 10 o'clock area. I'm pointing that out because this fire hall is also a community hub. They have food truck Fridays there. They have bingo during the weeknights. So it's it's a quasi community center as well. And then we have residential areas kind of in the center of the circle, some commercial shopping areas towards the periphery. And Route 1 is pretty dominant through here as well. Route 1, as you can see here, it's running north-south, but a little bit at an angle here on this map. Lots of commercial activity, fast food, hotels on the Route 1 corridor, and then also a county library down here at about 7 o'clock. So we looked at existing conditions for bicyclists with a bicycle level of traffic stress analysis for the BPA area in Elkridge. Not surprisingly, Route 1 is the main issue. It's the main issue for most categories in this area. So that shows up as red, which is the most unfriendly for bicycles, really quite dangerous, high speeds, high volume roadway with no bicycle facilities. And then the other roads in the area, quite a few on green here, which is the LTS1, the least stressful. So Rowanberry Drive is a good way to get off of Route 1 and can be used somewhat as a bypass for Route 1. Lawyers Hill is kind of the extension of Rowanberry Road. And most of the back roads off of Route 1 are fairly bikeable. There are some exceptions here. This portion of Montgomery Road shows up as LTS3 and Old Washington Road as well. Similar analysis with pedestrian level of comfort, existing conditions in the area. And again, similar, Route 1 is the most hazardous and uncomfortable. There is sidewalk on one side of Route 1, no sidewalk for the most part on the east side of Route 1. And even where the sidewalk exists on Route 1, a lot of it has no buffer. It's a narrow sidewalk immediately adjacent to high-speed traffic, so it's still not comfortable at all for pedestrians. And then most of the back streets, especially those that have sidewalks, Romebury Drive shows up as pretty comfortable. Old Washington is missing sidewalks, so that gets quite a bit of the orange and dark orange as well. We did some crash analysis. There are quite a lot of crashes in this area, almost all on Route 1. I think there were only a couple crashes that were not on Route 1. So we're pretty much looking at Route 1 crashes here over a 5-year period. We do have a couple of fatals that were pedestrians and quite a few serious and minor injury crashes as well. I wanted to point out here on this year-by-year chart, you can see volumes are shown, and as we all know, volumes dipped in 2020 when people were staying home because of COVID, and have come back, risen back up through 2023, almost to pre-COVID levels, and just below in this particular chart. But volumes basically rebounded. Crashes went down as you'd expect with lower volumes during 2020 and 2021. But they came right back in 2022 and 2023. In fact, they seem to be quite a bit higher than they were even pre-COVID. And if you look at the blue and green up at the top, those are the serious injury and fatality. So those are particularly strong. So something is going on. The bounce back from COVID on Route 1 in particular was not good. And then the other kind of takeaway from the crash analysis was the bicycle and pedestrian involved crashes that we counted, and you can see how many there were there. I guess there were 6, so it's not a huge sample size, but most of them involved crashes during dark lighting conditions, during the nighttime, and the lighting is quite poor for pedestrians and cyclists on Route 1 through this area. So through the BPAG project, we were able to come up with, the consultants provided some nice maps. These will be really helpful for identifying issues, challenges, and potential improvements moving forward. That's really what the BPAG program is about. It does not provide designated funding for making the improvements immediately, but it does get your issues into a state-recognized plan, which is obviously going to help for future funding, whether it's state funding, local funding, or grant funding. It's good to have these issues noted and kind of categorized and prioritized in a plan. So this is a map that the consultants came up with for the non-Route 1 portion of the BPA area. So basically identifies where there are missing sidewalks, missing crosswalks, some discontinuous bike lanes. We did, I did want to highlight as well, we found some areas that are more maintenance related. So it's not necessarily infrastructure, but it's more kind of doing a better job maintaining the infrastructure that's out there. This one, if you can see up here in the top right, there's overgrown vegetation, basically obscuring what is quite a good sidewalk here on Montgomery Road, sidewalk with a buffer right next to a transit stop. But the majority of the sidewalk was covered in overgrowth and vegetation. This is the map, an image that the consultant came up with for the Route 1, identifying the issues. We had very similar, in fact, even more so, overgrown vegetation. If you can see where I'm pointing here on the corridor. And this is one of those places where the sidewalk is immediately adjacent to the travel lane, no shoulder, no buffer. If you're walking on the sidewalk, you're literally inches and feet from traffic moving at 50 miles an hour plus, really uncomfortable. And the majority of this 4 or 5 foot wide sidewalk is completely covered in vegetation. So, this is something we could include in our short-term improvements. We've already contacted the agencies, MDOT in this case for Route 1 and the county maintenance department for Montgomery Road. just to kind of point out these areas in particular for them to keep an eye on and try to do, have a regular upkeep of the overgrowth and vegetation. Makes a huge difference in this area. And then, like I said, kind of the result is a recommendations map and chart here with short-term and long-term recommendations. Again, a lot of the classic missing sidewalks, missing bike lanes, opportunities for more crosswalks and improved markings and improved signal phasing for pedestrians in particular. Some of these are already being implemented. This area around Greenfield Road and Route 1, we're moving forward with some of the marking and signing improvements. And then on Montgomery Road, the county's moving forward with adding this bike lane segment that's missing currently on Montgomery Road. So already some good result that I think the BPA project did help kind of accelerate those improvements. And then again, we're going to be really focused on this area around the community center over the next year or two before it opens. We do need to make some pedestrian and bicycle connectivity and safety improvements immediately around the community center. Okay, so the second project in this area, a planning study, is immediately adjacent to that BPA area. This is Montgomery Road, but just to the west. So the BPA would be just here on this side of the screen. You can see actually more like the BPA kind of hits 95. The BPA circle is kind of right here on this corner of the screen. So we're looking at the area of Montgomery Road that does not currently have bike lanes and sidewalks, which is just to the west of the BPA area, crossing 95 and going over towards this green park area here, which is Rockburn Branch Park, very popular multi-use park. It's got baseball and soccer fields. It's also got a frisbee golf course, also has an elementary school. It's co-located with the park there, Rockburn Elementary School. So lots of destinations in Rockburn Park and pretty good connectivity to the west. We have bike lanes on Marshall Lee Drive and sidewalks on this portion of Montgomery Road further to the west. But we just have this key missing gap here, which crosses 95. It's one of the few potential bike and ped friendly crossings of 95 in the area. It's not particularly friendly right now, but that makes it even more critical that we try to get some improvements on this segment. So we did a planning study to look at potential bike and pedestrian improvements in this corridor. These are the existing conditions on Montgomery Road. It's a fairly standard 2-lane road with narrow shoulders. Unfortunately, the whole roadway is a little bit too narrow as it is for bike lanes. Where we would need 5 feet on either side for bike lanes. Even with some narrowing of travel lanes, we would not be able to get the 5 feet on each side with the existing pavement. And much of the corridor has what we call prescriptive right-of-way. We have a lot of this in Howard County where the residential lots on the side of the street actually own either all the way to the edge, own property all the way to the edge of roadway or into the roadway, oftentimes all the way to the center line of the roadway. And then the county just has a prescriptive right-of-way to use the roadway for transportation purposes, but the property owner still has a lot of oversight and say as to what happens with that location. So it basically makes it really hard for us to widen in any way, widen roadways, add bike lanes, add sidewalks. We do need to get the permission of the property owner, usually a homeowner. And in this case, there are many property owners, homeowners that have right-of-way out to the edge of the roadway or into the roadway. So we're going to need a lot of permissions. Basically, it's going to be a long effort to make any kind of widening improvements. But if we do get there, we have some concepts of what we'd like to do. We did an alternatives analysis with alternative 1 to add a shared use pathway on one side of the roadway. This would be the south side. Alternative 2 would be a shared use pathway, but alternating sides depending on where we have more right-of-way and where it's more constructible. Obviously, this could help us get around some of those right-of-way issues It also could lead to a much less usable facility if people have to cross the street multiple times to be able to continue. Alternate 3 was on-street bike lanes, on-street buffer bike lanes with a sidewalk. Ends up taking up a little bit more space actually overall than the shared use pathway would, because there's widening for bike lane in each direction as well as the sidewalk and buffer. An alternate 4, which is kind of a scale back, pretty minimal improvement to just do sidewalk essentially on one side, if that's all we can get. In this case, of course, there would be no dedicated bicycle facility, so the cyclists tend to like this alternative the least. We did some comparisons between all the alternatives. They are all quite expensive, as you can jump down to construction costs here, ranging from 2.4 million at the low end to 3.4 million at the low end, plus utility relocation costs, which could be quite high, especially with alternative 3. They pretty much all have property impacts, with alternative 2 being the lowest on property impacts, but that's the alternative that alternates the shared use pathway from side to side, so probably the least desirable in terms of usability. And they all have tree impacts. Basically, lots of the classic obstacles to any of these improvements. It's going to be a very large scale project if we can get around to implementing this. We did do public engagement for this project. We had public meeting and public survey, and gathered 27 combined surveys, about 40 people at the public meeting. And I just wanted to go quickly through some of the things, because we did have some interesting findings from our survey. We asked how people currently travel in the Montgomery Road corridor. Not surprisingly, over 90% consider themselves drivers, or they drive the corridor, but also high amounts of biking and walking from the people that we surveyed, over 50% biking and almost 40% walking. And then in terms of what people would like to see, the modes of travel for improvement, again, biking and walking improvements are highly desired, over 80% for biking and over 70% for walking. In terms of the public perception of the 4 alternatives that we presented, alternative 1 and 3 came out the most favorable. You can see that the profiles are very similar there. Alternative 1 may be just edging out alternative 3. Alternative 1 is a shared use pathway continuous on one side, and alternative 3 is on-street bike lanes and sidewalks. Alternative 2, which is the flip-flopping shared use pathway, was the least desired. And then alternative 4, which is kind of the scale back, just the sidewalk but no bike facilities, also fairly low. Like I mentioned, cyclists are not going to like that one. Travel speeds are an issue on the Montgomery Road corridor. We did, both from the measured speeds that we have, but also from public perception. Most people think that the vehicles are driving either too fast or a little fast. So speed is a known issue there as well. And then we like to ask how satisfied people are with our public outreach and our efforts with our planning studies. So we got some good ratings there, with a lot of people satisfied or very satisfied. In terms of the next steps for this Montgomery Road project, we do have some good progress coming up through resurfacing. This summer, the portion of the roadway is going to get resurfaced. So the portions that I mentioned where we need a lot of property acquisition or easement or interaction with the property owners, those are not going to be possible, because it's going to take years for us to get there with all the property owners. But there is a portion on the east side of the project where we have enough road width to do on-street bike lanes. So basically, it's going over the 95 bridge, which is a key location to help people cross 95. So we are going to be able to implement that with the resurfacing this summer. The roadway doesn't need to be widened. Working with MDOT to get permission because they manage a portion of the roadway there that goes over 95. So that's happening soon from Rowanberry Drive to Elliebank Drive. And then the rest of the corridor will have to go through, it looks like a more long drawn out process, selecting an alternative from the ones that we've reviewed, doing some design work, coordinating with the adjacent property owners, utility owners, and the environmental permitting agencies. There is a preserved wooded area in the corridor as well. And then exploring options for funding of the construction, which is, like we saw, going to be at least up in the $3 or $4 million range. So kind of a long-term outlook for the remainder of this project. And the study link is provided down there at the bottom. If people are interested, you can go there and learn more. I think that's all I had for the presentation. If there's any questions.
All right. Seeing as there's no other questions, thank you, Chris. We appreciate your time and information. And we will go ahead and move on to the next section of the agenda. Miriam Sultan will talk about the active transportation newsletter.
Hi, everybody. I'm here to talk about the active transportation newsletter. Next slide, please. So what is the active transportation newsletter? So BMC staff, on behalf of the BRTB, compile and publish this e-newsletter every month. It focuses on biking, walking, and rolling updates across the Baltimore region. We highlight efforts to make it safer and easier to walk, bike, and roll in communities across the region. And we feature members' updates. So any public meetings, surveys, project updates that the members have, we try to find those and feature them in the newsletter. We also feature funding and grant awards and all opportunities to provide public input. And that's a picture of our header in the newsletter. Next slide, please. How many people read the newsletter? So we have around 4,000 recipients with a 40% open rate. The average conversion rate, which is how many unique people click for the number of newsletters that's sent out, is around 2.73%, which is pretty good. It varies month by month. As you can see on the sidebar, you can see the number sent, the number opened, and the unique clicks. So it really depends on the month of the year, what topics are in the newsletter. Next slide, please. Currently, we have an engagement survey out. We've been putting it in our newsletter since March. In March, we launched the survey, and then all the subsequent newsletters, we're featuring just a little blurb telling people to take the survey. Currently, we have 23 participants, and if you want to go see the survey, it's at www.publicinput.com/ATsurvey26. So that's our permanent link to the survey. Next slide, please. So first we asked readers, what city or county do they live in? We are seeing that 43% of people are from Baltimore City, and there is a spread across the various counties. The next most common location is 30% of people being from Baltimore County. Next slide, please. We also wanted to know what city or county people work or study in. So same statistic here for Baltimore City, 43%. But then we get more of a spread with 17% being from Anne Arundel County, 17% from Baltimore County. And as you can see, there's some representation from the other counties as well. And some people don't work or study at this time, maybe retired, maybe, homemakers. Next slide, please. One really interesting thing that we wanted to know is after reading the active transportation newsletter, what did it compel people to do from there? So 16 people said they filled out a survey. 16 people said they registered for Bike to Work. This is out of the 23 people who took the survey. Many people shared information with friends and colleagues, clicked onto web pages and story maps, provided comments on projects or plans. And then we even had, a few people attend a public meeting from learning about it in the active transportation newsletter, which is pretty good. Next slide, please. We asked people how useful the newsletter is to them. 52% of people said it's very useful, and 43% said somewhat useful. Only 5% of respondents said it's not very useful. And with a small sample size, that's about one person saying that at this time. So next slide, please. We wanted to know which kinds of articles people find most useful. So out of 16 people who responded to this question, all 16 said the project updates were very useful for them. People also really liked stories about how public input was used, opportunities to share their input, public meeting announcements. And we got a couple of write-ins. Some people like that we show maps of the proposed projects and notify the public in advance. And another person appreciated that we share events coming on. Next slide, please. Here's just a selection of a few comments that we got. I'll read out a couple of them. Somebody said, it's a solid roundup of regional news specific to active transportation. I'm not aware of a proper substitute. Keep up the good work. Someone else said, communication with the public on projects/issues is so important. It also shows engagement and transparency with the public. So all the comments we got were super positive about the newsletter. People liked being made aware of these opportunities throughout the region and don't know another place to go for the compilation of opportunities necessarily. Next slide, please. At the same time, we've also launched the newsletter hub. Previously, we sent out the newsletter every month, but there wasn't a place that you could go to look at the previous newsletters unless you had been a subscriber, you could go through your emails. So now we have this website called the Newsletter Hub. Every month after the newsletter comes out, we put a hyperlink to the newsletter and we list the stories which were in that edition. On the side, we have a place for people to sign up for the newsletter if they aren't already on the mailing list. This is tracking editions since mid-2024, when the newsletter started to be published on a monthly basis. And if you want to go to this site and look at all our newsletters, it's publicinput.com/ATnews. We find that this is a really good spot for people to follow projects through their steps. For example, if in 2024 we mention a project was funded with a Bikeways grant, just for example, for like 30% design, later on we say they've achieved that design. As they go through the additions, later on we can say now they have a grant for 60% design. So it's a way for people to track projects through their life cycle. Whenever we post about a public meeting, especially a BMC public meeting, since we have all the information about those, we advertise it, and then afterwards we give a recap, how it went, some information about what we heard. So we try to get a before and after. We try to not drop a story, but whenever we can find more information on a certain topic, we keep up awareness about that. Next slide, please. So how can you support the newsletter? We would really love if you could send us stories. Currently, the way that we find stories is through maybe any newsletters or mailing lists that we subscribe to, or any public meeting announcements that we find on social media, or that we find on calendars from the counties, like Anne Arundel's DPW calendar. We look through that for public meeting announcements, for example. The Streets of Baltimore website for Baltimore City's announcements. We also look into a lot of Facebook, Reddit, LinkedIn posts. But if we could get stories directly from the jurisdictions, that would be really great too, because sometimes we miss things. Sometimes the announcement that's made to the public is too late for us to put in the upcoming edition of the newsletter and it gets missed out. So that's something we'd love from you all, is some notification about these kind of topics that we write about. You can also subscribe to the mailing list on publicinput.com/AT-news. You can take the survey, and you can spread the word in your jurisdiction. If you would like, you can email Charlene, her email's on the next slide, to ask for the text and a QR code if you want to advertise the newsletter at any of your future meetings. Next slide, please. For more information, Charlene is the lead on the newsletter. You can email her about any upcoming stories, about any materials you might need to advertise the newsletter, or about any questions or comments you may have on this topic. Any questions right now about the active transportation newsletter? Or comments? Okay, thank you.
And since you have the floor, Miriam, you could go ahead and continue with the next section of the agenda, the Bike to Work Week 2026 update.
Sure. Yeah, it's not the right presentation.
Sorry, Miriam, I didn't have that one open for some reason. Let me just grab that real quick.
Hey, no
Apologize
worries.
for the delay.
I'll drop the link in the chat for the newsletter hub.
Great, thank you. Let's see what happened. Okay, just one second.
There's a link to the newsletter hub, so you can see all our previous editions. And then I'll just share the link for the survey once you read the newsletter. There we go.
You. Okay, got it open now. Thank you.
Thank you. Today I'll also be providing an update on Bike to Work Week, which was last week. Next slide, please. So this year we made a few changes. We have a new registration system. We used Public Input, which is a website that BMC uses for a lot of our projects. For our registration form, we kept it as simple as possible, kind of removed some questions. And a new thing we added this year is terms and conditions. If anyone gets hurt while biking, they cannot sue us. I didn't hear about anyone getting hurt this year, so that's great. We removed the QR code check-in at stops and shops. So this is something we tried out last year, is that when people came up to a certain Bike to Work Week location, they can scan a QR code and put in their name and email and then get the shirt. A lot of people didn't want to do that. There was a lot of crowds at certain locations. Some people didn't even have their phones on them. So we cut that this year. People can just walk up and grab a shirt. We just asked them if they're registered. And at the end of the week, we asked all locations for their remaining t-shirt count, so we knew how many shirts we'd sent each location, and then we knew how many shirts they have left at the end of the week, so we can estimate a little bit the number of participants at each location. We did have a lot of locations that completely ran out of shirts, which is great. Next slide. Another thing that's new this year is an ArcGIS web map that our GIS team here at BMC has put together. So it featured all the locations and included a layer for bike facilities to help people plan their trips, so they could see where there was comfortable bike infrastructure to get to different stops. Next slide, please. Big thing that happened this year was the announcement at the Baltimore City Hall mayor's event on the Monday of Bike to Work Week. The mayor announced that Baltimore City is dedicating themselves to 17 miles of new or improved bike lanes within the next 3 years, I think. And because this news went so viral all over the internet and there was a story in the banner about it, it got a lot of people to look into Bike to Work Week. the reporter mentioned, Bike to Work Week and the website in his article. And so we got a lot more registrations during the week because of how much this announcement was featured on the news. We also usually have the mayor's event on the Friday of Bike to Work Week, which is Bike to Work Day. But a lot of people take long weekends, work from home Friday. If there's a day they'll take off in the week, it'll be the Friday. So we decided to make it Monday instead to try to get more people to come out to the City Hall event. Next year, we'll think again about what day of the week is best. Next slide, please. Registrations by year. So we had a huge registration drop off in 2020 because of the pandemic. And since then, registrations have been pretty steady at around 1,700 more or less after, the pandemic ended in 2020, 2021, when things got back to normal with people going back to work. However, this year we had a large jump in registration numbers, which we're really happy about. And from last year's count of 1,660, this year, our counted registrations were 2,028. Next slide, please. So for registrants who accepted the terms and conditions and selected their county, we had some incomplete registrations in there too, but doesn't mean people didn't show up. We are sharing here the count by county of people who registered. So Baltimore City had the most people registered at 921, and after that, Howard County at 360, and we did have people from every single county participate this year. Next slide, please. This is our just a graph of registrations by county by year. So you can see that every county has increased in registrations. Queen Anne's County doubled between last year and this year, for example. Next slide, please. We also asked people how many years they participated. For 31% of people, this was their first year, and we have 11% going strong at 11 plus years. This was the 29th year of Bike to Work Week in the Central Maryland region, and next year will be our 30th anniversary. So we're planning to, invest heavily in the 30th anniversary next year. So for these people who participated 11 plus years, who knows who's done it since the very beginning. Next slide, please. This year we had 26 celebratory events, which we call live pit stops through the region. And the breakdown is here on this slide. Next slide, please. And we had 18 bike store partners. One notable point here is that a lot of bike stores have closed in Baltimore City over the past few years, so we only had one partner bike store in the city for this year. And we had representation from every county except for Harford County on the bike stores. But Harford County did have 3 pit stops where people could go pick up their shirts at certain times throughout the week, and even there was a group ride at the Aberdeen Proving Grounds. Next slide, please. The event photos are in our Google Drive, and if you attended any events or if you just want to see the photos, I'll share the link for that in the chat after this presentation. So you can add your photos into the drive from there. Next slide, please. 2027, Bike to Work Week will be from May 17th, which is the Monday, to Sunday, May 23rd. Bike to Work Day is always the 3rd Friday in May. We are preparing a survey to send out to all people who registered, whose emails we have, to ask them how they found the week, what we could improve, how they participated. Bike to Work Week is something that we spend basically the whole year planning. So even now you can start thinking of ideas for sponsors, for pit stops, for pickup shops, and you can email the team with your suggestions and any other comments or feedback. Next slide, please. This is our Bike to Work email address where you can email the team. It's bike2, like the number 2, work@baltimoremetro.org. Thank you very much. I'll just drop the link to the Google Drive in the chat. Any questions or comments on that? Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
I
Appreciate
did
that.
have a question. I'm sorry. Miriam, did you guys consider, because is that going to be the Friday before Memorial Day?
Um, yes.
I think
Bike
that's
to
going to
work.
greatly affect participation.
Yeah, so Bike to Work Day is a nationally set day by I think the League of American Bicyclists. So it just because of the quirk of when the first day of May is next year, the third Friday is the 23rd. But that's a good point that we can look into what we can do about that. Because I also think that it seems much later than every other Bike to Work week, just because of the day that May starts in 2027. Thanks, Deborah. Meg, did you have a
Yeah, I have
Oh.
a comment. I just want to say I want to commend you all and thank you for the amazing support for Bike to Work Week that you offered. Other jurisdictions like Anne Arundel County and the city of Annapolis. It was very well planned. We got our shirts and everything, and I think it was a smashing. I'm sorry, it's kind of loud. The Blue Angels are flying here. Um, but I wanted to thank you, and show my appreciation.
Thanks for that. I know that there was some issues with shirt distribution this year. It's a huge event throughout the region, but we all did the best we could to make sure every location was provided for and the whole region was represented.
Yeah, well, you did an awesome job, so thank you.
Thank you. And I just put in sort of where Bike Month comes from, which is the League of American Bicyclists, in the chat, and I'll just get up that Google Drive as well. Thanks. That's the end of the presentation.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to our next section is the roundtable discussion. And we'll go ahead and start with the city of Annapolis. If we have anybody from there.
Yes, it's me again.
Yes.
I just spoke. Just wanted to, I guess not reintroduce Bike to Work Week, but it was really fun. We had a couple meetup spots. We had very good turnout. The weather was awesome. Everything was, went swimmingly. There are a few things I think that we can do next year to boost participation, but I think that's always the case because there's so many competing events as soon as May starts that it's really hard, which is why I made the comment that I made, praising the planning efforts, the communications, the regular check-ins, the meetings. Those things are all really important. So that's an update from us that we had good turnout. We had a couple in the city of Annapolis. We had a couple different meetup spots where our county executive joined, the mayor joined, most of our city council, and others, including our former mayor. So I thought it was, really successful in that respect, and we had a lot of community members involved as well. The other update is we're moving forward with our efforts to identify a vendor for our bike and scooter share program. I can't name those necessarily who are in the running, but we do have a, pretty good pool of applicants. And then the other is we're still in the process of our mobility plan, RFP, and we have identified a firm to help with that, to rewrite our bike master plan and a few other, very pertinent plans that will be very helpful to our larger system that we're working on, which is connecting the trails with Anne Arundel County and beyond. And the other is that we are really excited about doing more bike safety education, bike as well as pedestrian and also motorist education that I think is going to greatly improve our numbers in terms of not only fatalities, but just the awareness that they need to share the road with cyclists. And there are a few other things, but thank you for hearing me out.
All right, thank you. Next we have Anne Arundel County.
Hi, Dan Allen with Anne Arundel County here. Just a brief update. Kind of echo was already said about Bike to Work Day. We had our Bike to Work Day event this past Friday. In front of the Chop Tank restaurant, and we had a pretty good turnout. And we are also working on acquiring some bike and pedestrian counters, and we're currently evaluating different trails and intersections to place them throughout Anne Arundel County.
Thank you very much. Baltimore City.
Hey, this is Tyler Smith, Dockless Vehicle Program Manager for Baltimore City. On the rentable e-scooters and e-bikes side, we have seen a big increase in ridership this year after our record year of over 3 million rides last year. Through today's date last year, we had about 750,000 rides. This year, we have over 960,000 rides. So it looks like about 28% growth over last year. So we're projecting close to 4 million rides for this year. And yeah, just to echo, had a great Bike to Work Week kickoff event with the mayor's ride and everything that happened there. So very happy to get BMC support on that. And yeah, that's our update.
Okay, thank you. Baltimore County.
Good afternoon. For us, we are first of all, thank you, Lillian, for coming out every single year to our Bike to Work Day. We wouldn't know what to do without her and her dog, Olive, who is our mascot for our pit stop in Towson. For us, we were, Bike to Work Day went as it normally does for us. We're focusing currently on some of our trail designs. Bloomsbury, which we're just waiting for the MOU to be signed in order for us to start the construction process. Also, our Safe Routes to School project that we have in Edgemere, which is about to go to construction. And then our Red Run Trail, which is going to be moving from the 50% design to closer to being, I think, 90% or 100% designed by November. So just continuing to work down our trail projects that we have and getting them, fully designed and applying for funding. That's it for Baltimore County.
All right, thank you. Carroll County. All right. I guess we'll go ahead and move on. Harford County.
Hello, this is Cyril over here. So pretty much there's no new updates at the moment other than the Bike to Work Week being pretty good. All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Howard County.
Hi, yeah, Chris here. So a couple things in Howard County. We are updating our bicycle master plan. We had a 2016 version, so it's been 10 years and we're doing an update. Been working on that for most of the year. We did a lot of public engagement early in the year, and we're working with RK&K as a consultant to write the plan update, and hoping to take that to our county council for adoption later this year. And then the other update is on our Safe Routes to School coordinator position, which is grant funded through MDOT. We are currently going through the hiring process. The job has been posted, and we have applicants in. It's now closed, so we're reviewing applicants and starting the interview process, and hope to get somebody on board in that full-time position starting in July of this year.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Next is Queen Anne's County, and that would be me. We just recently purchased 7 new eco counters. We upgraded all of our eco counters that we had purchased previously from 2019, and one of the reasons we had to was the modem used to be, I guess it was 2G or 3G, and therefore it doesn't work with the current situation we have now. So we're getting those reinstalled in the areas and able to collect some more data. We're still working on phase 4 of our design of the continuation of the South Island Trail. Um, we're also have to wait until September 1 for the final paving of phase 3 of that section of the trail due to FIDS, forest interior dwelling species, because of a time of year restriction. The weather didn't cooperate with us right towards the end, and we could only get the first pave down. So now we just wait anxiously until September 1, and then we can have that phase fully completed. Next is MDE.
No updates from MDE today. Thank you.
All right, thanks. MDP.
Hi, no new updates from us. Thank you.
Okay. How about Highway Safety Office?
Hey everyone, this is Meg. Cynthia had to drop off the call, but she gave me a few of her updates for the Highway Safety Office. They're excited to now have the fully approved and signed version of the Strategic Highway Safety Plan now up on their website. And then she wanted to remind everybody in this group that the PBEAT meeting, which is the Pedestrian and Bicycle Emphasis Area Team, is going to be meeting on June 4th at the BMC offices. So if you don't have that calendar invite, just email Cynthia or myself. Thank you.
All right, thanks. MTA.
Nothing today. Thank you.
All right. How about SHA?
So we have installed the first 2026 Complete Streets Quick Build project. That is on Maryland 150 in Essex Middle River area. That just installed a lane separator curb extension and a no turn on red restriction at the intersection of Maryland 150 and Old Eastern Avenue. That's just testing out some of the PSAP project proposals. We're also working on the Wilkins Avenue BPPA plan. That's in Baltimore County as well, in the Catonsville Arbutus area. And that should be that plan should be completed by the end of the year. We're working with Baltimore County and Deborah on that. And the end of April, April 29th, we had a public meeting for the Maryland 450 PSAP project in Annapolis. Very, very well attended, generally positive feedback. So we're going to be moving forward with that design later on this summer. And that's all from me.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the Secretary's Office, TSO.
Hello again, everyone. Meg Young, a few updates from TSO. Appreciate everyone's hard work for Bike to Work Week. For us, it's been the whole bike month. So we've also attended a number of bike enroll to school days and had a little uptick now in helmet requests. So as a reminder, the Maryland Highway Safety Office gave a safety grant this year to both BMC and WABA to be the distributors of helmets for any sort of events like bike and roll to school events, or I've just linked Cindy to the chief of police in Bel Air for an event that they're having. But any formal event, you can request helmets if you'll have some kids, or I think even up to adult helmets that can be given away. And for this fiscal year, all of those requests need to be in by June 15th. Still on Bike Month, tomorrow we have a webinar, an MDOT in Motion webinar about micromobility. So we'll be covering regulations in Maryland, but I'm also excited to say we have the Director of Education from the League of American Bicyclists who will be on the webinar and sharing some national best practices for e-bikes and trends nationwide. And then I mentioned this earlier, but until May 31st, Bikeways applications are still open. So get them in. And if you have any questions, you can email mdbikeways at mdot.maryland.gov. I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And next we have BMC.
Great. Thank you
Sorry,
so much.
Charlene and Miriam, could I hop in for a quick second?
That's fine, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up real quick on what Meg said about the bike safety, the bike helmet project we're running with the Highway Safety Office. We're actually asking if you could get your requests in by the end of this month. So we have time to get approvals and order them and still close out the grant by the end of June. So if you want any helmets, we do still have funds, like she said. If you wouldn't mind, I can ask Charlene to send out the request form to everybody after this meeting. But if you wouldn't mind sending them back in to me by the end of next week, that would be ideal. Thank you. Sorry.
Good to know. Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Miriam, could you give an update on PRG, Cherry Hill, and Henryton Road real quick? And then I'll talk about the tip in the TLC program.
Sure. So we have two segments of the Patapsco Regional Greenway that we're currently doing 30% design for. The Cherry Hill segment in Baltimore City just had our public meeting yesterday night at the Middle Branch Fitness and Wellness Center. For that, we have our public comment period open until June 8th. And so I can drop a link in the chat. You can take a look. We've selected the alignment after 2 previous rounds of public engagement and working closely with all related city agencies and other community organizations in the Cherry Hill area and integrating public feedback. So the Cherry Hill segments, we're on our 3rd public comment period, almost wrapping up 30% design, and then we'll hand it over to the city. For PRG Henryton Road, this is a very small spur of the Greenway, which is in Patapsco Valley State Park, bridging Carroll and Howard counties. For that, we have just wrapped up phase 1 of public engagement, where we introduced the idea to the public. Now we are, putting together existing conditions, analyzing community feedback. We responded to questions and comments on the website, and I can drop a link in the chat to that too. And after that, we're developing our alternatives for a few different locations the route couldn't go. And we're going to share that with the public sometime this summer. So those are the updates on the 2 segments. One of them is kicking off and one of them is wrapping up, the BMC portion.
Thank you. And I'm going to give a quick overview of the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, and the specifically bicycle and pedestrian related elements. Let's see. So this, the TIP is done on behalf of BRTB by BMC technical staff who carry out the work. So the 2027 to 2030 TIP, called Region Now 2027, documents the anticipated timing, costs, and purpose for federally funded or regionally significant transportation projects for the next 4 years. So giving an overview, there's $9.2 billion in proposed funding. In that funding, proposed funding cannot exceed what is reasonably expected to be available from state, local, and federal sources. Let's see. So the bicycle and pedestrian specific improvements include 21 federally funded and regionally significant projects out of 171 total projects, with $256 million in proposed funds. The investments include the West North Avenue pedestrian safety improvements from Mount Royal Avenue to Hilton Street, Maryland 2 safety improvements from Maryland 177 to Maryland 648, the PRG Elkridge to Guinness Open Gate Brewery segment, and then the US 1 Prince George's County line to Gorman Road project, as well as the SHA Transportation Alternatives Program. And we also want to note that many of the roadway and bicycle projects incorporate bicycle and pedestrian and complete streets elements as well. Right. So the Baltimore region doesn't meet the national air quality standards for ozone and must review its transportation plans and programs to ensure conformity. The report concluded that projects in Region Now 2027 pass the air quality determination, will show emissions levels necessary to demonstrate conformity, and will not worsen existing air quality violations. So Beginning on May 1st, we launched the public input page, giving more information about the projects in the air quality report. We also have an interactive story map that gives more detailed information about all of the 171 projects in TIP funding. And we're also inviting people to share their thoughts at regionnow@publicinput.com or via voicemail, also through an online survey, or you can take the survey by text. And so that'll all be open until June 15th of this year. Wonderful. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Nicole Condell or Anna Marshall at BMC. Did anybody have any questions or comments about the tip before I move on to the TLC program? Okay. So just a reminder, the Transportation Land Use Connections Program application period has opened. I know many of you are familiar with the TLC program and have participated in it. So that's just a quick overview. So it provides technical assistance to local jurisdictions to support projects that reduce roadway traffic, improve safety, address extreme weather-related impacts, and make it easier for people to walk, bike, roll, and use transit. We're looking for projects that strengthen the connection between transportation and land use. The program historically has funded 9 projects totaling $690,000 in local technical assistance. Local jurisdictions that are voting members of BRTB are eligible to submit proposals, as well as non-member jurisdictions within the region who can participate as secondary recipients through a BRTB member jurisdiction. Interagency and interjurisdictional partnerships are encouraged. Selected applicants receive short-term consultant services rather than direct funding, and there's no local match required. So the funding can be up to $800,000 or $80,000, excuse me, for technical assistance for planning projects such as concept plans or feasibility studies, or $100,000 for 30% design projects. They're typically completed in 6 to 8 months, and we want to emphasize that applications should demonstrate strong public support and include a plan for community engagement. Let's see. So funding priorities including expand multimodal transportation options, supporting TOD, addressing community-specific transportation and land use challenges, increasing access to transit, advancing the bikeable Baltimore region network, improving safety for people biking, walking, and rolling, and addressing impacts of extreme weather, as well as improving access for low-income populations. So due this year, we refined the program description, replaced the checklist with targeted questions aligned to priorities and funding goals so we can get, a little bit more targeted information about your proposed projects. We also added questions on alignment with the Bikeable Baltimore Region Plan since that was completed, and also multimodal safety improvements, as well as resilience to extreme weather impacts. We included additional questions on planned public engagement and emphasized cross-jurisdictional and multi-agency collaborations. Also clarified the roles with jurisdictions taking the lead and BMC providing support, as well as requiring a letter of support from a community organization. And we also simplified scoring criteria, which is aligning with the similar TLC program at MWCOG, which we were really grateful that they have been sharing information about how their program works so we can continually see how ours can be improved. And we also introduced application support office hours. So after BPAG meeting today at 3 p.m. from 3 to 4, we will be available for people to drop in to ask questions, to just kind of talk to us if you have anything you need to run by us about your proposal or potential project idea. And we'll do that every Wednesday throughout the application period. We are also available by email though, or if you want to chat on the phone outside those hours. So the applications are due June 17th. We'll then review the applications, the BMC review team. The selected projects would then be presented to Tech Committee at the July meeting with award letters sent out after that, and then project kickoff meetings would be done shortly after. So if you have any questions, of course, reach out to Keith Kuchler. And he's got his email and phone number here, and you guys all know him. But let me know if you have any questions. So that's all the BMC updates I think we have today, unless anybody else has any own stuff.
All right. I guess last chance to see if there's any more business that comes before the group. Speak now. If not, then I guess our next meeting is Wednesday, July 15th. And thank you everybody for participating and for your updates.